I used to struggle a lot with being productive. And I mean, back in the day, I had like before high school, this is I wasn't like a very good. I wasn't with the best student. I was still able to get things done, but I wasn't like one of like those A students. But then high school hit, and I was able to figure out that the real key to productivity is not really time management, but it's attention management. Once that hit, once I figured that out, then I was able to essentially harness my attention to achieve everything that I've achieved. So I was able to become a valedictorian in high school. I was able to then be successful graduating from UCSD in computer science, one of like the hardest majors. And then I was able to get a really good job in the engineering field. And while then being able to like even purchase my own home, like by the time I was 26, well, even in while doing all that, I was still able to take care of my health, spend a lot of time with friends and family, and loved ones from like my lovely partner here, Gina. And so, yeah, it's essentially it's about attention. And so, like, what we're going to be talking about today is how you could also harness the power of your attention, and explain why it is about attention and it's not about time management itself, in order to give you the powers of mind bending time.
And so, I mean, they say everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. But I have a background in neuroscience. I'm actually finishing my PhD right now. And, looking at attention and arousal and how those brain states, affect our perception of time, you find that, neurotransmitters or chemicals in the brain like norepinephrine or noradrenaline and dopamine, they actually influence the shutter speed of the brain. So we perceive time differently depending on our arousal levels and attention. So, for example, if you're highly aroused, highly attentive, time is going to go by slower than if we weren't.
And so, another instance where you lose track of time or perceive time differently is when you get into the flow state. Flow state is a term coined by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, where essentially you lose track of time and you feel like you don't know where like the time went. You may have been working for a long time, but essentially it felt like time just flew by very quickly. And so that's essentially when your attention is completely engrossed in doing some task. And essentially, what we're going to be talking about here today is how we're able to bend time so that you're able to make the most use of your time and not focusing on time management, but focusing on attention management. So you're able to make the most use of your time, essentially maximize those 24 hours to get you to where you want to be. And so everybody has the same 24 hours in a day, but where you allocate those 24 hours, where you actually set your attention in those 24 hours, that is what matters the most. You need to essentially put your attention on the thing that's going to move the needle. So, what the hell does moving the needle even mean? So, moving the needle is like the thing that is going to make the biggest difference in you getting to the next step. When you where you allocate those that attentional resources, that's where and you actually put like the actual focus that it needs, not being distracted while you're working doing things like multitasking. That's not an effective 4 hours. It's essentially is like focus work, because you just spend like 1 hour of like complete focus. Essentially you could get done like the amount of like you would get done in 4 hours if you're completely focused, instead of trying to do 4 hours of work when you only get 1 hour of actual work done.
And then it's also important to kind of figure out what schedule works best for you in terms of like during what time of the day you're going to be most creative, most productive, most alert. So, if you're an early bird, you'll probably want to tackle the most important tasks at the beginning of the day. Whereas if you're a night owl, maybe you'll leave things more toward the evening time. It's also important to kind of chunk tasks into like around 90-minute intervals, because as the body has a circadian rhythm, so there are fluctuations in arousal over the day, there are also kind of like shorter scale fluctuations in arousal and attention. And so usually we're most productive like in a 90-minute period, and then we kind of like need a break before we can be maximally productive again. Also, in terms of multitasking, although we like to convince ourselves that we can do it effectively, that's just not really how the brain works. We can shift our attention, rapidly, but we can't attend to multiple things at once as much as we would like to think. So if you really want to be effective with your time, it's best to kind of just devote your focus to a single item for, a reasonable amount of time before switching to something else. Even just like checking your phone or answering, the door or whatever can totally throw off your focus for a task. And then it'll take some time before you can kind of hone your attention back into that task.
Mhm.
Now, before we go into the details of our method to best harness our attention for productivity, we also want to address the idea that you need to feel motivated in order to do something. Now, that's a total myth. Like, there are plenty of things that we do that we don't really feel like we want to do, but that we still get done.
And this is aptly put in like the book The War of Art. So not the art of war, but the war of art. So it's essentially the difference between a professional and an amateur. The professional gets the work done when just every single day because it's required, but the amateur essentially just waits until they feel like doing it. And so it's about shifting the mentality from being an amateur to being a professional and just doing the work. Because the hardest thing is actually just sitting down and start. Once you sit down and start, the work gets done automatically if you don't allow yourself to do anything else. So say for example, if it's about writing code in my case, or working on social media, or doing business development, whatever it is, if I just schedule a time and not allow myself to do anything else, the mind is going to want to do that because that's the best thing. And like if you force yourself to sit down and just do it, um, so be a professional, not an amateur when it comes to doing the work.
All right, so the first thing is we like to do this like the night before, just to be able to have the attention and be as productive as possible the next day. So the first thing is we do is we take stock of exactly what is holding our attention. It can be things like business, family, friends, health, whatever it is. The point is to try and clear your mind as best as possible so that you can then focus on what matters the next day. Um, so the act of writing down everything occupying my attention will usually free more headspace, so that I am able to work productively the next day, because at least I have those things written down. So then the next thing is I ask myself, and I am clear exactly what I want to achieve. What are like the big goals? Those could be things like, so for example, having a successful business, getting stronger at the gym, um, like building a family, traveling the world, whatever it is. Those essentially those things that I want to achieve in my life. Those are the things that I ask myself, and so I'm able to stay focused and be able to get to where I want to be. Then the next thing is decide on the activities that are going to move the needle, as we were talking about before. So those so like the main thing right now to focus on is having a successful business. So the first thing that I do, or like the first thing that's going to be the most important, is doing like a lot of the social media work. So it could also be things like doing business development. It could be doing like prepping and meeting with clients, obviously. So essentially, those things that are gonna move the needle, like continue moving like the business forward. Then, more concretely, I also like to schedule the time, and not allow myself to do anything else during that time. If I need to do other things like clean or whatever, at least I schedule it, so that then I am able to be more effective with the hours that I have. So I schedule uninterrupted time first to tackle the most important activity with no distractions. And essentially, I don't allow myself to do anything else. So that starts in the morning. So 5 a.m. First thing I do is work on the social media, from 5 to 8, for example. Um, and then I start planning on like out the rest of the day. Um, it could be like, so first 3 hours doing like work, productive work, then going to the gym. Um, After that, having breakfast and showering. Obviously, don't want to be stinky for the rest of the day. and then getting back to work. So essentially doing things like prepping for clients, meeting with clients, then afterwards like eating, like, so essentially when I eat, those are like when like the breaks that I have in order to replenish my attention. And then also like walks, for example, just keeps like my energy up throughout the day. And then also after usually eating, so for example after lunch, then I will then start doing things like meeting with the clients themselves. And then once I'm done with that, I'll have dinner and again another walk, keep my energy up throughout the day. And the more, because it's about like attention, so keeping your attention as focused and sharp as possible. So then afterwards, comes down to like the business development side. So kind of like working on that, and yeah, that pretty much sums up the day. We're basically finishing it up with like the prep. So doing these things like that I showed at the beginning. When it comes to thinking about what is the most important task, what is occupying my mind. So we have like the right attention going forward to for the next day. And yeah, so one note is to make sure that your schedule breaks and time for yourself, so you can have the greatest return on your time. Basically, those things could be things like meditation. For example, one of the things that I scheduled in the night was meditation. Do things like breath work will allow you to also not only regain your attention because you're taking a break, but also practice honing in your attention. And so things like make sure you're including things like exercise, meditation, because all that's going to allow you to keep your mind sharp and being as productive as possible. Pro tip. So, whenever you're working and there's some distracting thoughts, something that you need to do, just write it down. It'll create more headspace and it will allow you to come back to it later on after you're working with it. And you'll be able to, if needed, schedule it at another time, unless it's an urgent matter, of course. Pro tip number 2, never ever have your phone next to you. Those things are attention grabbing machines. So they'll sap your attention, and what you want to do is put them as far away as possible, like this young lady right here. And that's the method, y'all. So try it out, and if it helps you, subscribe and share with other people. And also leave in the comments if you want us to talk about anything to help you improve your performance and become like the high performer that we know that you are.
And if you want more exclusive content, check out our Facebook group, Mind Body Mastery for High Performers.
And so my name is Gil.
I'm Gina.
And we're out.